Okay, we talked in the first part about the highlights and your sort of the way you've come up as a trainer. Looking back now in the 30 years since you've been training, excuse me, how much have things changed in the way things are done?
Well, I think on the whole, trainers are more professional now than they've ever been. They've had to be. I mean, when I started training, most of the trainers were Playboy trainers, really. I suppose they came from wealthy families, and training was an enjoyable pastime. But nowadays, the young people coming into training are really well prepared for it. They've probably got good backing. I started training with 3 second-hand wheelbarrows and a rented yard. Anyway, but against that, there were more staff about. When I was an apprentice, there was more staff about, and gradually it's become harder to get good staff. I've been very lucky. I do have fantastic staff, but the industry has suffered from lack of good staff over the last 15 years, probably.
Okay, now one of the stories, and I would imagine one of the stories that keeps the hope alive for a lot of people on limited budgets is Betty's Hope winning the Super Sprint. Tell us about that story.
Well, I always like buying 2-year-olds or yearlings because it's the only way you can get a nice horse cheaply. We've had some really bargains over the years, Anyway, my wife and I went to Ascot. There was a yearling sale at Ascot, and I went there hoping I might be able to pick up a few owners if they hadn't sold their horses. And we were looking around, and the market was down, really, really down, and there were some really lovely horses going around for nothing, really. And it's funny, you can often buy a cheap filly. You can often you can buy a well-bred filly that's sound quite cheaply sometimes. If it's a colt, a nice colt always makes his money, always. Anyway, we saw this little filly walking around, and spoke to the breeder, found out he was desperate to sell. So we followed it in the ring, and luckily was able to purchase it for 3,000.
And then the Super Sprint was worth.
Well, we got her home, never a problem. Easy to break, quiet ride, showed ability on the gallops. We got her out really early. She ran the first week of the season at Kempton. Unfortunately, came up against a really good filly that went on and won her next 3. She was second, and we had 3 seconds with her before she actually won. Won a little race at Chepstow, then won a £25,000 nursery at Chelmsford, and then we just gave her a little break, and we ran in a Super Sprint, and I had ex-champion jockey on her. Well, the champion jockey actually, Sylvester, rode her for me. Give her a great ride and won by a short head.
So was it a surprise, or were you sort of quietly? I know you can't be totally confident in a race like that. Were you quietly confident or hopeful?
It's funny, I had another filly in the race, Daddy's Diva, who was working equally as well, or nearly as well. Well, equally, yeah, in the camp, we didn't know which one was the best, really, because once you get them fit, you don't try them too hard at home because you just wear them out. Anyway, we had one drawn right on one side and one the other side, and I really wanted to be drawn in the middle. But both horses were in the betting. They were sort of 14-1 each, both had chances. I mean, there was one horse that was had about £12 in hand of Richard Farley's, and that didn't fire on the day. That was only finished midfield. But our filly with Betty, they pay first 10, you see, so there was a good chance of a payday, and I was hoping that we would finish in the prize money. Didn't think she'd win. That was beyond our dreams, to be honest. But anyway, she won a short head, so everything worked out well.
So what was the initial investment, Betty's?
Well, I paid £3,000 for her,
yeah.
But it cost us I think £1,500 to run in the race. But she won 124,000. But she's now won nearly 150 now with her other wins.
Okay, now we talked earlier about your high strike rate, especially given the horses that you're, the sort of races you have to go in. So how much time would you spend in the form book mapping out races and planning campaigns for your horses?
Yeah, hell of a lot, really. It's funny, when things are going well, your entries just come off the end of the pen. You look at the races and you make a decision just like that. If you're going for a sticky period, you spend so long procrastinating which race to run in, you often worry too much. But making entries is a confidence thing as much as anything. I mean, we run our horses quite a bit, and sometimes if they're too high in the handicap, they've got to run regularly to get back down to winning mark. So there's no point in leaving it. If you've got a horse that's high in the handicap and he can't win, there's no point in hanging about. You just got to run him a few times, get him back down again to a winning mark. But I do spend a lot of time trying to pick the races. James, my son, he's very good on the form book as well. But at the end of the day, often you try to run in the race you can win all the time, you know. I mean, nowadays, Racing Post has got all the form in. I mean, years ago, I used to have 3 or 4 phone books. And nowadays, those companies have all gone bust because the Racing Post does it all for you.
Yeah. Now, you say you've got James and Patrick both working here with you at the yard. So
yeah, well, James is here. Patrick's here full time. He's assistant trainer. Pat's a really good rider. He was champion amateur the other year on the flat, and he's joint leader of the championship this year. He's a great asset in the yard. I mean, they've taken the pressure off me. I mean, I've been in racing since I was 15, so I've been in racing, 47 years now. So obviously I don't do quite so much running around as I used to. The 2 boys have taken the pressure off a bit, really. And James, he was stable jockey for several years and then stopped riding and went off and did a law degree. Tried to be a solicitor for a while, found it a bit dreary, and has now come back into racing with us again.
Okay, now I'm led to believe you're investing some of what you won in the Super Sprint in new horses.
Well, yes, we bought 9 yearlings so far this season, this yearling season, and I'm going to Newmarket next week and hopefully get a couple more. We've bought them all to sell them to new owners. So yes, we've got quite a few youngsters here looking for new homes.
Now, listen to you talk. You make it sound like it's quite easy. Or you go and see a nice horse, buy it for $3,500 or whatever it was, and then it wins a massive race. I mean, really, it's a lot harder than that, isn't it?
Oh yes, I mean it's easy to see a nice horse, but it's buying at the right money. I mean, I can go to the sales and spot a nice horse. I mean, funny, I'm quite unusual in that I don't look in the catalogue before I go to the sales too much. I pick out most of mine by eyesight. See, I like to buy an athlete first, then I try to get something that the pedigree suits. There's no point. See, a lot of trainers, a lot of people can buy out a catalogue and they buy a black type. You know, that's the well-bred horses, or the pedigree looks fantastic. I'll buy that. Well, the trouble is, a lot of those aren't athletes. I'd pride myself on 80% of the ones I buy win.
Right, and that's a massive, I would imagine, compared to the majority of people. What is it you see? Well,
I try and look for an athlete first, and it's got to have good conformation. The trouble is, if you buy a horse with poor conformation, that's where it turns a leg in or out. You find it puts pressure on the rest of its joints. It's like having a car with a wheel wobble. If you don't get that wobble fixed, that'll eventually damage the bearings all the way up through the suspension and steering. But of course, unfortunately, a racehorse can't be replaced. You can't put a new leg on a horse, you know.
So do you buy in the hope that you'll find owners, or do you have orders come in, or is it a combination?
A bit of both, really. You don't buy so much on spec nowadays because it is harder to sell to new people. The trouble is, what's happened, the top end of the market, which Arab sheiks play at, that is a very strong market. If you're a breeder and you've got the right horse, you'll sell it very well. But it's the middle market has disappeared a little bit, and that's where people like me come along. And I've been able to buy recently nicer horses for small money. Okay,
now is it a worry across the industry that owners are sort of the older, in inverted commas, demographic, or is that a worry?
Well, I remember when I first went into racing, all the owners I ever rode for were old. You know, they've always been old, and the majority of them are long gone now. It's something I think they've always on about getting younger people into it, but most people don't go into racehorse ownership until they're into their late 40s.
Right. So it's not. That's just when people they've raised their kids and they've got a few quid to spend and they just go out and enjoy it. Is that the sort of thing that happens?
I think that's the case. I mean, Syndicates are different. A lot of people in syndicates are younger because they haven't got the money to spend, and they probably come into it. They're probably people who like a bet, enjoy the horses. But I think it'd be nice to get more younger people in. But like I say, most people don't buy racehorses until they stop playing football or cricket themselves. You know, when they do sport themselves,
Yeah.
they tend to do those sort of sports. Is when they get a bit older and they can't do that, they get into something else, spectator sport. You know.
Okay, so do you actively go out there looking for owners? Do you sort of, in a way, advertise to get new owners all the time? Is that a priority of the yard?
I don't think I've ever got an owner through advertising as such. The best way to get owners is to train winners.
Right.
You know, it's like, that's the one thing about our business. If a racehorse trainer hasn't got a business to sell as such, because in ordinary business you could sell the business and you sell your list of customers to somebody, but in racing training, owners only have it with you because they want to have it with that particular trainer. It's not a yard. They want a relationship with that trainer, you know.
Right. Okay. So do you sort of encourage the racing clubs, partnerships, syndicates, or can they be a bit troublesome? What would be the...
No. Well, no. I mean, I think that's the way forward, because it is very expensive. Years ago, stable staff weren't particularly well paid, and nowadays, although we would love to pay them more, it's not such a poorly paid job in comparison to what it used to be. But of course, it's made it very expensive to train horses now. The labour has gone up so much, and all the other things you have to do. So it is expensive to have a horse in training. And if you can get people into partnerships, all the better, I think. The old days of people having 10 horses in training are gone, you know.
Okay, well that was going to be one of my next question was, what are the biggest problems you face? You've already mentioned the staffing, and obviously paying the staff is got more expensive. Is there anything else that you particularly...
Well, racing's got so big. The worst thing that happened for people who work in the industry is Sunday racing. It's great for the spectators and the race horses, but if you work in the industry, it means you are working 7 days a week, or you could do. But those days are gone now, I'm afraid.
Okay, and so is that one of the next question, with the penultimate question, the biggest problems facing racing itself, and what are your pet hates, if you have any at all? Well,
the funding is obviously a problem. The trouble is, obviously, our money comes from the bookmakers, and they're professional people and very clever at their job. And most of the people who've been negotiating have been, from our side, have been well-meaning amateurs. And the bookmakers we really need to have a new funding system set up, because at the moment there's been a lot of racecourses. Well, they'll tell you they're making no money as well, you know. So I don't know what the answer is really, but I think things have to change.
Okay, and the one that everybody always asks about, the whip.
Well, the trouble is the whip. The whip, first of all, makes racing exciting, doesn't it? You know, when you see jockeys going for a finish, it adds a crescendo, you know. But of course, the trouble is, it's what other sport can you break the rules at and not get disqualified? So at the moment, you've got jockeys in big races are going over the limit and winning the race, and everyone's being paid out, and everyone at the time says, "Oh, well done, great race," and everything. And of course, then when it goes back, you look at the video, we hit it too many times. And the trouble is, it happens when jockeys are under great pressure to win races, especially big races. They will unfortunately break the rules. I think you've got to bring in new rules where if a jockey does do that, he probably doesn't ride for 3 months. And it sounds harsh, especially the second time they do it. And you'll find if jockeys get suspended for 3 months, they'll stop riding. They'll ride within the rules. All the other ways you could say disqualify the horse. That is another possibility I think you must think of. But of course, then you'll be accused of getting a horse beat on purpose by hitting it too many times. And so you open up another can of worms. But I do think we've got to bring in harsher penalties for people who break the rules. I'll never forget when the whip rules first came in, I had a horse to finish second in a £50,000 race, and the winning jockey broke the rules, and he kept the race, and my horse, only beating a short head, lost the race, and that did annoy me at the time. And I've been saying that, you know, the penalty should be harsher for years, and I think you'll find in the next 3 months they will be.
Finally, as a trainer, you've done very well. Have you got any unfulfilled ambitions that you've got your eyes set on to try and achieve?
Well, I'd really like, obviously everyone wants a top class horse again, doesn't they, you know? I'd love to have a really good 2-year-old that I could take on and be a classic horse. Very unlikely, probably. And I'd also like, if one of my decent stayers gelding, I'd quite like a crack at some of the big hurdle races again, you know? Or chase again, even, you know? I've got one hurdler at the moment, Champagne Champ. He's quite a high class horse. He should pick up a good couple of novice chases this year. So the national hunt flame still burns in me a little bit.
Brilliant, Rod Millman. Thank you very much.